Welcome back to the Energy Sovereignty Project and our update for the third week in June. As we said last week, this is a very special update because this is the solstice. So we're not going to spend a lot of time at the system because we've got a lot of data to go over back at the studio. And what we're going to start examining is that now we're at solar maximum. When we started the project on the 1st, we were only 8 days off from solar minimum. And so what that allows us to do is to make some very accurate predictions about what's going to happen the rest of the year. How much power are we going to have? At what point of the year can we expect a fall off of our power to occur? And so again, let's not spend too much time here. Let's get back over to the studio and start to look at some of those numbers in detail. Okay, well, we have a lot to cover here, and this one's going to be a little bit longer than our usual recap, so let's get to it. Starting on the 15th, where we left off, cutting it a little close, as we pointed out at the end of last week's recap, we started the day at 8% of system charge. This is the result of being fairly confident that we knew how to control all the variables that we were going to encounter in the evening, sometimes using cool temperatures at night to limit the amount of AC that was needed in the evening. We had good production for the day, just over 60 kilowatt hours, with a total consumption, even with the charge to the car, at 70.4 kilowatt hours. And in this case, I needed the car for an out-of-town trip, so a large slug was needed in the early morning. The sun was coming up and able to make the trip, leaving in the morning with 100% charge. And here's the notes for that, and that's what you can see in the notes. I'll let you look over that for a minute. Basically, again, taking a charge early in the morning prior to first contribution, and then that brought the total down to 8% during that time of first contribution. And so then we have the 16th, and again here we see the miles representing the return trip. Decent production for the day, again just over 60 kilowatt hours. And then once I got home, as you've seen in previous trips, typical quick blast of 22 kilowatt hours to the car, just to make sure that it didn't sit overnight with the batteries depleted. And that put us at a end of total solar day at 74%. But because that charge came on after the end of total solar day, it meant that when we come on tomorrow, you'll see that there's a slight reduction. So here you've got the notes. Again, I probably should have noted that the charge came on after total solar day. I may go back to the notes now that I've seen that and correct it for the record. But as you can see, at the end of the day, 81 miles and 33% charge in the vehicle. And then that brings us to the 17th. And again, cutting it close, we notice here that the result of that late evening charge. And again, it's not quite as close as it looks, because this is again one of those special situations where I wanted to get the car fully charged in case I needed it, and I felt that I could easily rely on not only the day's production for the 17th, but also that there was going to be a fairly specific amount of controlled discharge in the evening, like I had said before, by controlling the temperature, by opening windows this time of year instead of operating the AC. So then I'd be able to moderate that amount of discharge till morning. And so because of that, I discharged it again in the early morning, wound up at 6% at the time of first solar contribution. And as you can see, by the time 8 p.m. rolled around, the system was back up to 64%. And so here's the notes. Basically just what I said, showing the car at 90% in the morning and then ending the day at 79%. Because this time of year is all about the car. Much of it is anyway. The house is pretty much easily taken care of. So now we bring us to the 18th. Good production. 16 kilowatt hours to the vehicle to replace what was used. Bring us back to that 90%, ending the total solar day at 72% for a system charge. And that's after 61.2 kilowatt hours of generation. And again, it's important here and in all the days where we're driving heavily that we're back to that topic of power exchange. Where the driving is done, you need to pay very close attention to the in and out of those power walls. And here we have 23.9 kilowatt hours drawn from the batteries and then 37.6 kilowatt hours put back in. And that's the equivalent of nearly 2 power walls in capacity drawn out and 3 power walls put in. And so you can draw your own conclusions on that as far as what kind of systems would be appropriate if you couple powering your home off of it as well as using a car. And so this kind of information is critical when trying to size a system with the idea that you're going to achieve energy sovereignty with an electric vehicle. And here's the notes. 16 kilowatt hours to the vehicle to bring it back up to 90% for daily use. And you know, the comfort that any amount of driving will be possible. And I also need to ensure that the car was nearly full because I was going to have to top it off the following morning. And on the 19th, I did. As you see here, and what you'll see in the notes, to accomplish that 215 miles of driving that day, I needed 2 charges. One in the morning to top the car off, and then another in the evening to make sure it didn't sit overnight with no charge in the battery. Starting the day at 48% of system charge, system was discharged to 24% while charging in the morning, and we had good production, 62 kilowatt hours, and that left us with a total solar day percentage of 68. And so then here's the notes. Following a big round trip to the Bay Area to visit Tomas, another energy sovereignty nut, I returned around the time of total solar day and wound up putting another 20 kilowatt hours into the car, as you see there. And so then on the 20th, starting the day at 26%, good production for the day, 62.9 kilowatt hours, fairly moderate home use at and then 26 kilowatt hours to the car for a total daily use of just below what was taken in. And then once again, note the workout that the battery received. You know, again, basically 2 power walls worth was drawn out and 3 power walls worth was put in. And then the notes, 26 kilowatt hours to the car. I had to make a decent round trip on that day. That's why the showing up a little bit of extra use there. And then as the notes say, I had to be a little careful here not to charge too much, but by the same token I want to get a decent charge into the car to allow it not to sit in a depleted state. And then this brings us to the solstice. Very exciting, as this represents the halfway point. Starting the day at 30%, we again have a very good production, 64.5 kilowatt hours. Total solar day, or close to it, came to 71%. But then we took a large slug to the car to get its available mileage up. And again, like always, when we do that, it gives the power walls a workout. And so here's the notes. And not shown here was that the car was actually brought to a 90% charge. Some of the driving was done after the charge to take care of some errands and things of that nature. I'll let you look at that for a moment. And then the 22nd, our closeout day, 122 miles of driving, starting the day with a system charge of 22%, good production, 63.8% or 63.8 kilowatt hours there. And that allowed 15 kilowatt hours to be sent to the car, and end the day with a system percentage of 53%. And then we've got the notes showing the 15 kilowatt hours to the vehicle. Start and stop information. So that's the recap. And now let's go ahead and have a little fun with the solstice. So I'll be doing a special on this at the end of the month when I have access to all the data that I need. Even though the solstice was on the 21st, the year-to-date data is tabulated by Tesla monthly, and so June's numbers won't be available until the 1st of July. But we do have some other information to play with, and we'll pull this up here. This is the raw data reported to the Solar Edge website by the Solar Edge inverter. And you can see there that strange little fall off in May. That's due to the 5 days where the system wasn't actually reporting. You'll remember we lost our inverter. And an average output for those days would be about 50 kilowatt hours. And so for those days, I'm going to go ahead and add those in. So that gives us an additional 250 kilowatt hours. And that brings our total yearly raw production to date to 7.13 megawatt hours. Pretty good. The year can be extrapolated out then that our expected output, raw output now mind you, of the solar panels is going to be somewhere around 14 megawatt hours. That's impressive. That's impressive. And so let me pull this up here. If we plug in the numbers from July to December to flesh out the last of the year, then we wind up with a slightly lower total, but maybe more accurate, of 13.94 megawatt hours. Still really impressive. And although the numbers aren't completely in, our total raw production from January 1st of 2019 to the end of May was 5.469 megawatt hours, and that includes that 250 kilowatt hour adjustment for those lost days. And so here it is with June omitted. Give you an idea of what our expectations are if we look at the previous year. But that's raw production. That is DC power straight off of the panels. And so what's our usable AC power? Well, the Tesla Gateway reported for that same period that I just showed there, the Tesla Gateway reported 5.336 megawatt hours, and that again is from January to May. And that represents very accurately that primary loss of a little over 2% between what's created at the panels and then what is recorded out the other end of the inverter by the Tesla Gateway. And so we're going to examine these losses in a special video at the end of this month, where we examine the efficiencies from the roof to the batteries, then from the batteries to the home, and then in a separate one we'll be doing it showing how it goes from the roof to the wheels of the car and running the efficiencies there, running it through all of the inverters, not only from the main inverter from the solar panels into the batteries, but then also back out of the batteries and through the vehicle's charger. All right. And so this shows as of the end of May, our total draw from grid power has been 502 kilowatt hours. And then by extrapolation, we can say that by the end of the year, we're looking at roughly a megawatt hour or so in total. And then during that same period, we've sent 154 kilowatt hours to the grid, and then if we add on another 88 kilowatt hours, because that's what we've produced here in June, that will bring our total use to 510.2 kilowatt hours, and then our total delivery to the grid of 242 kilowatt hours, so roughly half of what was actually used. And these are rough numbers, but I feel that they're pretty accurate given that we're not likely to use any power for the remainder of June. And all this is going to make for a pretty exciting month closeout. We're going to have a lot to cover, so stay tuned over this next week or so. Our next video, I'm going to cover and answer a subscriber question regarding dirty solar panels. And so I didn't clean the panels at the beginning of this year like I usually do. I knew that we were going to be winding up examining this kind of thing. I thought, okay, well, that'd be a great way to do it. Let's go ahead and leave it for what would be a year, because I generally clean the panels twice a year. And then we'll also examine what kind of equipment we need to clean our panels, and then look at the overall difference between a dirty panel and a clean panel. Give us an idea of, is twice a year enough? Should we be doing it maybe 3 times or 4 times a year? And then we'll also look at equipment costs of the gear to do the cleaning, safety gear as well, keep everybody safe out there, as opposed to maybe hiring a service to do it. So we'll try and price some of those things out as well. But as always, thanks for joining us. If this is the kind of thing that interests you, if you happen to stumble onto this, please feel free to like and subscribe and take a look at some of the previous videos to get caught up to how we got to where we are today. And again, I wish you all the best of luck with your own systems, and we'll see you in a few days.